You've got a really interesting background in that it seems like perhaps your career was in two phases, one as a physician and then one as an entrepreneur and executive. And frequently we find that great med tech companies or companies in the medical space are started by physicians. Um, Maybe tell us a little bit about your journey from physician to all the way through to present day.
Sure. I think you can characterize it as two phases, but also a bit of a windy road. It's been a fun and interesting journey. So you're right. I was a heart surgeon, cardiac surgeon, for many years. I was an academic practice at various academic institutions around the country. But cardiac surgery is a very technology heavy industry, a specialty that we use pretty complicated tools to stop the heart and work on it and turn it back on. And so, frankly, that was one of the things that attracted me about heart surgery was the opportunity for technological innovation. And so, I was always interested in medical technologies and kind of driven to always ask the question, like, how can we do things better? Why do we do things a certain way? And while I was a cardiac surgeon, I developed some expertise and some notoriety around the treatment of blood clots to the lungs, pulmonary embolism, and how to do surgery for that. And one day I was thinking, well, why are we opening somebody's chest and putting them on the heart lung machine? There must be some other way we could do this by inserting something through a catheter that could suck out these big blood clots. And that fast forward, that led to an invention called AngioVac that I developed, and having for years been involved with the MedTech industry in a consulting form and serving on MABs, and just I found myself in a situation where I had one of my own ideas, trying to figure out how to navigate it, and it took several years, because they don't train you that in medical school. You have a good idea, how do you actually take it forward? But ultimately, I got partnered with some colleagues, one of my surgical colleagues, as well as a MedTech colleague. And while we were still practicing heart surgeons, we started a company called Vortex Medical and navigated the process of getting this technology developed and getting it quickly through FDA and humans. And we have eventually sold it to AngioDynamics. And now it's become standard of care for various types of abnormalities and infections in the heart. And it's been really fun and exciting to see that. And it was really at that point that I said, not only is this fun and interesting and sort of aligned with my interest in technology, but you could also I realize you can have an impact, potentially even on a larger scale than you can as a surgeon. And that's when I decided to hang up the scalpel and try my hands at entrepreneurship and being an executive and building and running companies. The good news and the bad news about that experience is that it was wildly successful and happened quickly and I wouldn't say it was easy, but if you rank it on the sort of the scale of things, everything went really, really smoothly and really quickly, and so that. But in some ways, that was a little bit of a seduction, right? Because you realize in other situations that things don't always, things don't always go, quite that well, and you have to figure out how to navigate the challenges.
It seems like you're now involved with like a portfolio of companies. You have like a holding company structure. You also have PAVmed, which seems like you're trying to accelerate from concept to commercialization, maybe, multiple different devices. Maybe, shed some light on what you're involved with currently.
Yeah, I'll give you just a little bit of a brief history on that. So after we sold Vortex and we're like, okay, what's the next chapter? We created PAVmed as this entity to kind of be a long-term vehicle. So we didn't have to kind of go raise capital for one product and then do another product. We had this vision of building a portfolio through our own ideas, but also going out and finding technologies from academic medical centers and places within our network that we had access. We knew we would have access to technologies. And we also did the very contrarian thing, which is we went public very, very early on, before, frankly, we had anything to speak of. And we've been fortunate that the public markets have provided us with the capital that we've needed to move things forward. So PAVmed is structured like that. But one of the things that's happened, we do have multiple technologies under PAVmed. We have a digital health company, we have an incubator. But you end up running with the horse that I'm bungling my metaphors here, but what we found was this technology from Case Western Reserve University that ultimately turned into our biggest subsidiary and the bulk of the value that we've created, which is Lucid Diagnostics, which is a technology for detecting the precancerous conditions of the esophagus that allow us to detect those and monitor and treat them so that we can those patients don't go on to progress to cancer. So Lucid is our largest enterprise right now. It's a subsidiary. It's also public. So I have the good fortune of having two public companies that I do quarterly calls on every quarter, and all the work that goes into that. But Lucid has been an amazing experience. Now, talk about challenges. There's a lot of challenges with regard to reimbursement pathways and commercialization and so forth. But we're at the precipice right now of getting Medicare coverage and being able to have access, being able to provide tens of millions of patients who are candidates who are at high risk for developing esophageal cancer access to this groundbreaking technology. So it really did play out the way we had planned, and with regard to being able to bring in these technologies and advance them towards commercialization.
And what does the rest of the portfolio or pipeline look like? It seems like primarily you're working on Lucid, but there's other things.
We have a subsidiary called Veris Health, and Veris Health is a digital health company that is seeks to enhance cancer care. It takes the digital health model, which is can be somewhat diffuse, right? Chronic care and mental health and other areas, which I'm not denigrating any of that. But those are kind of hard because they're a bit nebulous. Here, you're taking patients who are diagnosed with cancer, are going to have 6 months, a year, maybe a year and a half of highly intensive therapy that carries significant medical risks that are associated with that therapy, and trying to implement digital health tools to improve that care. It is kind of crazy. We give people these very sometimes toxic treatments, and they go to their doctor, once a month, maybe once every couple of weeks. And in the interim, it's a bit of a black box. They don't check in unless something bad happens. So Veris has this it's great software platform that allows continuous monitoring. Patients to collect physiologic data at home, blood pressure, heart rate, activity, and so forth. And that all gets fed in real time to their oncologist so they can track things and pick up potential complications from their therapy earlier. And we also are developing a proprietary technology around an implantable monitor that gets implanted at the time of the, typically these patients get a long-term port to get their therapy. And so it basically converts that port into a smart port. So it's collecting that physiologic data and uploading it into the platform in real time. And so that's very exciting. We have a partnership with Ohio State University, which is the third largest cancer center in the country. We're just about ready to launch that commercially in partnership with them. And we're looking to get the implantable device through the FDA and on the market in 2026, next year.
Did you consider taking private money? Just curious, why you decided to go the public route.
So, we felt that our model did not fit within sort of a bit of the cookie cutter VC startup world. And I'll give you just one proof of that without getting too deep into it. If we had started PAVmed was started initially with traditional medical devices. And when the opportunity for Lucid came up, Lucid, the technology includes a medical device, a really novel way to collect cells within a minute in an office setting instead of an endoscopy. But it also includes a molecular genetic test, that's run in the laboratory and uses the latest and next generation sequencing to interrogate cells and to do sequencing. We had no prior experience with that. And so if we were a VC-backed company doing a couple of medical devices and we, said, hey, investors, we're going to go tack in this direction and we're going to go become a diagnostic company, that wouldn't have worked. So we had but by accessing the public markets, we've raised hundreds of millions of dollars over the years, and we've done so in a way that is consistent with our model and allows us to pursue that. And that's not to say we don't have strong long-term investors who are private investors. Lucid has been operating in a very tough capital markets from the time it did its IPO in 2021. Small cap diagnostics have been in very, very difficult to raise capital in that environment. So we do have private investors who we've aggregated and built relationships with, who have participated in financings into our public vehicle, a little bit different than the traditional follow-on offerings. We just did a financing last week for $27 million. That was a traditional public financing. Those have been few and far between because the markets have been super, super tough on that. So I would do it again. It was a very contrarian path that we took, but we would not be here today, with the opportunities that we have forward and the opportunities to provide value to our shareholders if we hadn't taken that contrarian route.
It seems like you've moved into this kind of new role as kind of a corporate executive fairly smoothly, and you've almost fully transitioned. Are there parts of being a physician that you miss, or maybe you still do kind of practice?
No, I don't practice, and the reason for that is you can't be half a heart surgeon, right? I mean, you can, there's certain specialties, and I have friends who are and colleagues who've done similar things to what I've done, where they they're an ER doc and they still do, one shift a week to keep their clinical skills active. You can't really do that in cardiac surgery. So I guess you might imagine I get asked that question a lot. And to be a bit snarky about it, I miss 49% of it. I really do miss patient care. I actually love being a doctor and engaging with patients. And as I told you, one of the things that convinced me to shift to shift my career was an understanding that there would be an opportunity to help patients broadly. I mentioned with AngioVac, there were tens of thousands of patients who are getting that therapy every year. With Lucid, we have an opportunity to save thousands of lives, from detecting precancer. So, that's still that at our core. At our core, we are, focused on patients, just in a somewhat a different way. I also like the surgery. Surgery is actually quite gratifying, the physical task of doing that. But we joke that we built a surgical company because we have, we actually have 3 surgeons in our executive team and 2 other physicians. There's a certain mentality in surgery that's, kind of a bias to action, being able to act on limited information and so forth, that are kind of part of how surgeons are wired. And we've kind of built our company a little bit around that psyche as well. So that served me well, I think, in making that transition.